Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp. Thank you so much for joining us today. Last week we talked about some quick tips to help you and your kiddos during the Halloween season, so I hope you found that helpful. This week I am really excited. This is going to be part one of a two-part series actually, and I am so excited to have our guest Rachael Woosley on the show today, and we're going to talk about the benefits of CBD and also give you some true facts about it too. There's, I feel, a lot of education that needs to be done when it comes to CBD. But before I get started with that, I'm going to go ahead and read to you Rachael's bio. And let me just get my glasses on here because I want to read this gorgeous, gorgeous biography here about Rachael. So Rachael has such a diverse background. She is a retired nurse with a 21-year career spanning various healthcare specialties, from pharmaceutical research to school nursing and even orthopedics. Her passion for healthcare extended beyond hospitals as she dedicated 15 years to nonprofit management, organizing humanitarian aid missions and disaster relief services. Rachael's journey led her to explore diverse modalities, including meditation, breath work, soul contract reading, energy healing, nutrient-dense nutrition, and plant wellness. And she expertly integrates to offer a comprehensive understanding of the science behind spirituality, wellness, and even energy healing. In addition to her medical background, Rachael, along with her husband, ventured into entrepreneurship years ago, successfully launching multiple businesses in health and wellness, sports recruiting, networking, and business solutions for small business owners. She is the Chief Mischief Officer, I love this title, for the Mischief Manager and for the Mischief Manager Plus Company. She blends her passion for self-care, self-discover, and business solutions together to help small business owners manage the mischief in their lives and businesses to create clarity, time, and space. As a mother of 3 high-performance athletes, she exemplifies the harmony between self-care, self-discover, and managing all of the mischief motherhood can throw at you. Since leaving the medical field, Rachael has been leveraging her expertise to help others manage their mischief. With her holistic approach and vast experience, Rachael empowers individuals to find harmony in their lives and business to create the biggest impact. And it is my great pleasure to welcome my friend and colleague, Rachael, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I know. I am too. This has been a long time coming. I've known Rachael for, years.
A decade now,
think.
Probably.
Yeah, I think
don't
we're
know.
coming up on like 10 years. I've known Rachael for, I'm going to just say a decade because it's going to be easier to define it that way. But I've known her for years. And over the years, I've had so much joy just collaborating with her, learning from her. And so I've been wanting to have her on the show for quite some time now. And I'm really excited to be actually talking about the wonders of CBD. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit, Rachael, about how you kind of got into this whole realm, and tell our listeners today about how you got into learning about CBD.
Well, I got into learning about CBD out of sheer need for myself personally. So I had a health scare back in 2018, and because of my background in nursing, I went the whole Western medical route thinking that, I was going to be fixed. And I really didn't need to be fixed. I just needed to be healed is what I realized in the process. So I spent about 6 months working in the Western medical realm, trying to heal myself, to be told every time I went to a new doctor, had a new biopsy done, all these kind of things. And in the end, they just kind of looked at me and said, I think you just made it all up in your head. That's really what it boiled down to. It was like 4 doctors were like, yeah, I just think you made this up in your head. I'm like, so all of these symptoms, all of these tests, all this stuff. and you're telling me it's all psychosomatic. And so I wasn't really happy
Right.
about
Yeah.
that outcome. So I began, because I'm a researcher by nature, so I began looking into plant wellness. And I mean, we live in Arizona, so there's a lot of plants that are legal here that aren't legal, in other places on the medical front. So I was looking into some alternatives, but I wasn't really comfortable with going that extreme. And so I began looking, and I had a chance encounter just sitting down with another mom, actually, and we began talking about our family and different things. And she was in the CBD space, and so she just gave me a sample. And that's really how I got started, was because I had been kind of researching it, but more on the medical side and not really on just the CBD side of it.
Right.
And so when I started, and I had the sample and I began looking into it, I was like, hey, this might be part of my answer to my own health. So that's how I got into it.
And it led you down the rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, I went down a big rabbit hole. Big rabbit hole. So yeah, one I'm thankful for.
Right.
Super
And I this is why I wanted to have you on the show, because and we'll kind of get into that in just a few minutes here, but we've started using CBD with Drayson, and some of the stuff that we've noticed with Drayson has been actually quite extraordinary. And this is actually our second time trying it with him. And so we'll kind of get into that in just a minute. But can you tell us about pure, we've talked about this before, you and I, but pure CBD, and how not all CBD has THC in it, and what the difference is. Can you kind of give our listeners a little bit of information about that?
Right. There's a lot of misconceptions about, especially with the THC part of it. So I'm actually going to take it into the canine analogy. So dogs are dogs, but Chihuahuas are one type of dog, and Great Danes are a different type of dog.
Okay.
And so that's what we're talking about. So when you talk about CBD, you're talking about one type of dog.
Okay.
And when you're talking about THC, you're talking about another type of dog. They're same species, but totally different outcomes that you're going to get. So the CBD aspect of it can have THC in it, but it's going to have a very minuscule amount. Usually by regulation, it's 0.3%.
Okay.
So if you have THC, which is more on like your medical marijuanas, straight up marijuana, those types of things, that part of the family will have more of the THC than it will the cannabinoids. So the cannabinoids are more in my space. That's the more healing parts of it, because we naturally have cannabinoids in our body. We just nutritionally have been deprived of them for a long time. Right. So,
and is that partially what CBD stands for?
Cannabinoids, yes.
Okay.
So we have this system. We have a system within our body, like the nervous system or our endocrine system, and it's called the endocannabinoid system.
Okay.
And so it's a system that's been there for, and in the ancient or Eastern medicines, they talk about it quite extensively, but in Western medicine, we took it out and didn't really talk about it in medicine until back in the I think it was like 1993, 1997, somewhere along there.
Okay.
That was right after I got out of nursing school, they introduced it back into medicine. So then it became something they started paying attention to again, but they weren't really sure how to provide nutrition for it. So
you're saying that on a cellular level, that there are certain, this system has those receptors for the components of CBD itself.
Yes,
so
it does.
It's like it's built into our
So mothers actually make cannabinoids in their milk when they're first starting nursing. So that gold milk that that everybody talks about, that's one of the components that has in there that is so beneficial for the baby.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how we jumpstart that in our children's system. Our children's system. So when we need to have that nutritionally, because it was taken out of our diet, because hemp was taken out of the ecosystem of feeding animals.
Right.
So, because it used to feed cattle and pigs and things like that. When they took that out because they banned marijuana and they just lumped hemp into it as well, then we lost that nutritional component within our diets. So we're like 6 or 7 decades out of having that. So we're really, in a way, like starving our bodies of a nutrient that it needs.
So we created a deficiency without realizing.
And that deficiency causes other deficiencies
in
the body.
Right.
So
yeah, and I've always said that too, just from what I learned, when I was getting my degree in nutrition, I remember that. Like, you create one deficiency, it kind of snowballs. It can create a magnitude of other problems.
Absolutely.
And so that makes perfect sense to me. And yes, and you're right. In some states, like, for those of you listening in, if you're not in Arizona, here in Arizona, it's legal to have, THC component or medical marijuana cards, but not every state necessarily. Do you know, just generally, are there some states that you can't even use CBD, or is it safe to use CBD?
No, in all states it's legal to use CBD as long, because any person that produces CBD, as long as the THC level is below 0.3%, it can be go across state lines. So there's no state that bans that component of it. It's once it gets over the 0.3%, then that's when it gets the legal things start happening.
That's when you run into
So you just
trouble,
have to look
folks.
at your own state, regulations. But
Right.
I can, with the products that I use, I can distribute them all over the U.S.
Right. Okay. And so I know we've also had a lot of conversations about this too, about the science behind CBD and currently what we're seeing within the science of it. And quite frankly, I've struggled with this. This is why I've come to talk to you about it, because there's not a lot of, I haven't personally found a lot of science behind it. So what does the science currently show, and where are we going with this, do you think?
Well, it's so new.
Yeah.
That's the thing it's new and it's not new, because it used to be a part of our diet anyways, and it was just there. So we didn't have to research it. Now because it's become legal again, the research is so new, and so there's not many people that are actually researching it, except for a few disease processes at this point. And so the research is very minimal, especially when it comes to autism or seizures or epilepsy in adults or anything like that. There are certain things. There's some research that has been done within adults based upon maybe pain management, anxiety management, those types of things, and they're seeing some benefits. But the actual data, when you're thinking research, the data is only like 4 years old. So that's not very extensive when it comes to research. Usually you want decades of research for most, I'd say that, but with current events lately, that's been shortened quite extensively. But usually in research, we think of a decade's worth of data, then that would be substantial data to say yes or no one direction. But it's just because it's so new. So we're kind of on the forefront of the research. So we can either be a part of it or we can just sit back and wait. That's my opinion. Right.
And so we got into this with Drayson years ago, to help him maybe with his stress and anxiety. That was the initial thing the reason why I looked into it was for that reason. And I couldn't even years ago find anything on it. Drayson was, I think, 5 years old the first time we tried using some pure CBD with him. And we didn't really see any results, but he's 11 now, and we just recently decided to try again. And so he's been doing it for a couple months. And, of course, we're working with his physician at the same time. So I'm going to preface it by saying that, I didn't just go rogue and make this decision. Lately, I worked with my healthcare providers, but we are now taking out some of the medication that he takes that helps with anxiety. We've been able to wean back a little bit on that and use the CBD drops twice a day for him. And it's so hard because I'm trying not to make a health claim. All I can tell you is that what we've observed. Right. But I feel like it has given him something that his body needs, and that he doesn't seem as anxious. But my concern initially when I went down this whole rabbit hole was because I couldn't find the research. Right. And that was kind of a big deal for me. Because I'm like you. I want to see the data. I want to see the research. I get really analytical like that. So I think that it's important for people to understand kind of that it's not a one size fits all either when it comes to the CBD, right?
No, it's not a one size fits all. And this is kind of one of those misconceptions that a lot of people have with CBD or any type of plant medicine, that you have to view, this is how I teach people, is to view CBD as a supplement. Okay, so it's like taking vitamin D or vitamin B12, or if you have a deficiency in vitamin K or whatever. So it's like a supplement. And so many of those things you have to take for a long term. There's not a short term win, because we're healing the body. We're not masking a symptom. So like with medications, oftentimes, and let me just put this disclaimer out there before I get myself in trouble, I am no longer a medical professional. So please seek a medical professional's opinion if you don't agree with mine. I'm totally cool with that. But I have to always make that disclaimer, because I do have a background in medicine, but I am no longer currently working or licensed, so by my own choice. But the way that we have been in a way trained in our society to view medicine is, one, it's a quick fix, two, it's masking a symptom, and three, there's an efficacy of that pill that we usually take. So when we have pain, we take a pill,
take it
and then 4 to 6 hours later we feel better, but we really don't feel better except for a short period of time while we're taking that pill. So we constantly have to retake it. Well, there's reasons why pills are designed that way, and that's a whole nother podcast. But there's a whole reason why that's done that way. I used to be in that arena, so I understand both sides of it. And sometimes those pills are needed in the short term. To provide a relief. And so that's part of my story, is when I got done with all of my medical issues to find out that there was really nothing wrong with me, that it was more of an emotional problem that I had than a physical problem. I was on every day between 12 and 15 pills to function. So I was taking that many things to just function every day. And I wasn't really functioning. I was pretty much like a walking zombie going through the day.
Surviving.
And I was surviving. And I knew I couldn't sustain that for long term, because most of the medications I was on was a very short term solution to a long-term problem. And so when I realized that I was going to have to change medications over and over and over just to sustain, and I didn't want to live like that for the rest of my life, because I just entered my 40s, and I was like, I got a long time to go. I don't want to live like this. So I had to begin taking the supplement of CBD, and that's what I did. And it took some time, but I was able to eventually, for me, it was in less than a year that I was able to wean myself off of all of those medications, and I've never been on another medication since. But I had to take time to heal myself. And that wasn't the only thing I had to do personally, but for the medical part of it, I was able to supplement and give my body the nutrition that it needs so that I could go and do the other things that I needed to do, like exercise, nutrition, all those things that we all know about. And I was able to implement those things, and I was able to get myself off of the medication. And so that's part of my story. And so it's a supplement. So we have to look at it as long term, and we have to look at it as, this is healing, and it took 40 years for me to get to that state. It's probably not going to take 4 days for me to get out of it, or 4 weeks, or 4 months, or 4 years. This is a long-term solution. And so when we look at it that way, for people who say it doesn't work, there may be a reason that it didn't work. It could be the product wasn't that great, the sourcing wasn't that great. Maybe you weren't in a place that your body was ready to heal, or you weren't. Your mindset wasn't right, or maybe there was something else that you could be taking or eating or whatever that could have affected it. So there's all these dynamics that we have to look at when we're looking, and that's, when I coach people on how to take CBD, I look at all those factors, and we kind of it's not just a one-size-fits-all program of how you do it, because if I said that, then everybody would be taking it, and it would not work for most people. But depending on the size, the person and all those factors, age and why, it could take a short period of time or a long period of time before you see results.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really valid point about it being supplementation, and that it's not something that's just going to immediately, be fixed. And I think sometimes we tend to think that way, like, oh, well, it's not working. Well, how long have you used it? 7 days. Okay, well, you might need to use it for a little bit longer. And even just in other supplements that I use and that I take, it was definitely things that I didn't notice. It wasn't like an overnight process.
Right.
It took months.
Well, yeah, and what most people notice is like what you're noticing with Drayson is that there's something that you typically give him that you're having to give him less of. So maybe like a medication that you take to sleep or for anxiety or whatever, you might have to take it less and less until the point you realize you don't take it at all. That's what happened with me with some of the medications. It was like, oh, I went like 3 weeks and didn't need to go get the script filled. Right. And I was like, oh, I don't like, and then I would ask my doctor, like, why do I need to take it if I haven't needed to get it refilled?
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, then why keep taking it? I mean, that's kind of how the process went for me as well, was I noticed that I didn't have to take certain things.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I was healing the way that my body needed to be healed.
Okay. Yeah, which makes total sense. So that which kind of leads me into my next question about, and again, we've had so many back conversations about this. It was hard for me to like skim it down on the topic, but you know, there's a lot of misconceptions and myths out there about CBD. You know, do you care to share with our listeners any funny maybe myths you've heard about CBD, or and maybe some things that you think that might be important for people to really understand and know about CBD?
Well, I mean, the biggest one we kind of already talked about. It's a supplement. It's not it's not like you're going to take it and overnight it's going to fix everything. It's not. And I never tell people that it's going to do that. You know, the other misconception that we've already kind of talked about or hinted to is the endocannabinoid system. You know, most people go through a nutrition class or something somewhere along high school, college. But if they've never been taught to deal with this system, then they don't know how to do it. And many doctors that were trained prior to it being added back into medical textbooks are not trained on that it's even an existing, you know, system.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at those factors, sometimes it's just going and reading about it and understanding that because the system's super important because it brings homeostasis. So it kind of brings the body back in alignment with itself. And if you don't have that system taken care of, then all the other systems are going to be a little bit wonky. And so we often find, well, why do I have to take this? And then I have to counteract it with that. And then I have to do this and that and da-da-da. It's like, well, if we get the one thing in homeostasis, some of these other things might just work themselves out on their own.
Right.
You know, and so that's a common myth. You know, in society, and like, this is not a pill.
Right.
And I know there's different ways in which you can consume CBD, and it needs to go straight into the bloodstream. And so I always tell people there are other ways that you can take it, but the most effective is going to be putting it under your tongue, getting it sublingually into your bloodstream. You know, kind of like a heart medication or things like that you might take sublingually, because you want it to instantly get in there and have the most effect and not hit the digestive system and be, you know, degraded in some way by the time it gets into your system. So, I mean, those are kind of the misconceptions, and I guess the funniest ones are the funniest one is it's always, well, it's going to get me high.
Yeah,
well,
I was going to hear.
It's not going to get you high. I promise.
I had a mom say that to me, like, you're getting Drayson high. I'm like, yeah, because I'm such a good mom.
Right.
No, of course not. I'm not getting him high.
You're
like,
right. Yeah. Oh, I want to say something to those moms. I'm like, oh, no. And that's.
Now me on the other, no, I'm just kidding.
Right. And that's, yeah, no, I know. Maybe that mom needs to.
Maybe mom needs to,
Maybe
but
mom
I don't
needs
know.
to take a little bit more than the CBD, but, you know, that's a whole nother topic. But
that could be a whole nother tangent.
Yeah, but I think that's the biggest misconception, is not knowing, like, the threshold. And, you know, with CBD, another misconception, it's going to mellow me out, because some people who use the THC, that can happen if you're using the more heavier stuff. But what you're going to find is you're going to feel more mellow out, because your body is not on overdrive.
Right.
So when it's out of homeostasis, it's like it's on overdrive trying to get itself back.
Right.
And when it's not doing that and it's functioning to the way that it's supposed to, you're going to feel more lax. So a lot of people who have many nervous issues, let's just put it that way, they oftentimes are like, oh my gosh, I'm just so chilled out. And it's like, yeah, because your body is finally relaxing, you know, after so many years of being so tense. Yeah. And that's what a lot of people need. And that's what really that mom needs, to be honest, is she just really needs. And so my kids, actually, they call it mom's chill medicine. Like, hey, mom, have you taken, you know, and I will do that, because there's some times where there's more stressful days, and my kids will be like, mom, you need to take more.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'll see sometimes they have habits that, may be a tendency, especially with kids like chewing their fingernails or twisting their hair or whatever. That's usually nervousness and for whatever reason. And so sometimes I'll just go up and give my kids a little extra dose just to help them let their body relax. And so it is kind of that, but it's not getting high and then like chilling out like you would see, if you were using the harder stuff. So that's kind of another misconception that, I'm going to get high and then I'm going to be like on the floor passed out. No, you're not going to, if you want to take the other stuff and there's a combination you might be, but I know people who do that, but I don't really see them like lay down on the floor. So, I know. I think it's just misconception. So, I would just encourage parents who are hesitant about it, go read what THC is and how it affects the body. And then look at the dosing, like the percentage that's in the bottle. Most bottles aren't going to have that on there. So if it doesn't, or if it doesn't say, that it can be, distributed, I would probably run, So, there's a lot of things, I would run from when it's coming to CBD and looking at it. So, yeah. Right. So those are the misconceptions, but
I hear
it's
that
not designed to get you high. No,
you're getting Drayson high.
If you're getting high from it, you're taking something else. Let's put it that way.
You're like, well, maybe you're not high on that, but it could be, it could be something else.
I would question your source right there. Question your source.
Yeah, I know. Well, I really want to continue this talk into our next episode. So, tune in next week for part 2 of our episode here with our guest speaker, Rachael Woosley, about CBD. I'm really excited for the next set of questions that we have for part 2. So make sure that you tune in. This concludes our episode for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you would like us to talk about, please feel free to send me an email at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. Also, don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook or Instagram, and feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. If you know of anybody in the community that this podcast would be beneficial for, please spread the word. We want to make sure that we are reaching out to anyone in the autism community and even beyond that to help create more autism awareness. And feel free to give us a good rating on your preferred podcast platform of choice. And once again, like I said, that concludes our episode for today. Until next time, thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, keep working on your puzzle, and it doesn't have to all be solved in a day. Take care.